Hello everyone, this is part 11 of What If Naruto Got Lost During His Training TS, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Moments later they spotted the two samurai who were battling a great many soldiers. The two men were standing back to back, the other defending the other's backs. There were no boss of the fallen around, the two samurai looked to be tiring, so the four men rushed the soldiers and cut, slashed, and espered into them until the four reached the tired samurai. The men paired up back to back to attack the soldiers and make sure that none of them got behind them. In any fight, having the enemy get behind you is a bad thing. This back-to-back strategy solved that problem, but it lessened the mobility of the fighters. The fight was extreme close quarters combat. There must have been hundreds of the soldiers and only 6 of them. Every time they cut down one, 3 more would take its place. Soon they noticed some of the soldiers were soaring overhead. They heard unholy screams coming from the soaring soldiers and they flew through the air. In the direction that they were coming from were 2 of their companions. Behind the 2 swordsmen was a giant bear of a man. He was running after the duo while flinging soldiers out of his way. One hand flung the soldiers out of his way, while his other hand held a very large double-bladed axe. The soldiers, upon seeing this new arrival, did not back down. They actually looked revitalized. Their attacks became more ferocious, more aggressive. They even started flinging some of their own at the defending men. All 8 retainers had come together, they had formed a small circle, and were quickly moving away from the running giant, and they killed soldiers left and right. Their will live was far greater than the intent to kill of their assailants. Before long their running led them to the gate of the town. They had a choice between running out and leaving their lords behind to fend for themselves against this surprising horde, or stay and fight. They chose to stay and fight. The priests dropped their swords and started going through a short seal sequence, ending in the tiger seal. Bringing their fingers up to their mouths, they let fly hundreds of tiny balls of fire at the oncoming horde until they ran out of breath. Then they did it again. All 8 of them had some ninja training, in both the styles of their 2 masters. The samurai ran towards their enemies, slashing their swords in the air as they ran. Their swords sent cutting winds at the soldiers, taking out many of their number. They alternated between downward slashes, upward slashes, and diagonal slashes. The swordsmen's katanas hit the ground as their hand flew a seal sequence. Slamming their open palms to the ground, they sent earth spikes at the enemy, impaling many in their paths. The Yojimbo sheathed their swords and used some shortcuts that they had come up with, created fiery dragons out of some of the small fireballs, and made the dragons ram into many of the rushing soldiers. The goal was to incinerate the giant. As the samurai reached the front lines of their enemy, they hacked and slashed their way to the giant. Their katanas were coated in chakra, which enabled their katanas to send out wind cutters with each slash, taking out more than just the soldier they had cut into. Some of the winds had hit the giant whom they were heading towards. The priests had soon run out of spare chakra. They were not ninja, so they could not use ninjutsu for long periods of time, so they picked up their katanas and sprinted to join their samurai brothers. The 2 swordsmen following in their wake. One of the Yojimbos stopped controlling his dragon, which dissipated after directly hitting the giant 3 times. He ran at the now out in the open giant, his brother following shortly behind him. The 8 men decided that the giant was the biggest threat and concentrated on him. They hacked and slashed at him until they moved as one. The finishing blow was a combined slash at the end of the giant. They jumped away to watch as the giant fell to the ground. His body and the boss of all the still standing soldiers fading into non-existence. Something was definitely wrong. Boss don't just vanish. They lie still. The retainers knew that their masters may need their help, so they used what chakra they had left to spare and made their way towards the keep to meet up and aid their masters. Karasu had encountered many traps, that although they were old, were still very sly. All the training that he and his clansmen had been doing had paid off. He sported only a few small SCRs, but overall he was fine. He was on the second to the top floor of the keep when he encountered his first problem. The room that he had just entered was filled with all sorts of soldiers. There were so many of them that he decided not to count them. Before trying to talk to them, they moved as one and attacked him. Luckily his retainers were not too far from him. Karasu, having disabled all the traps that he had encountered, had made taken him some time, which allowed his retainers to catch up to him. The 9 men then hacked and slashed their way to the stairs. Upon reaching it they bolted upwards. Higher ground was always a good thing. Due to the fighting, Karasu had sustained some nasty, but not life-threatening, injuries, as had his men. They sported cuts, bruises, and other things. But they had made it to the top floor. While the other 9 were off doing whatever it was they were doing, Mikio had reached the top floor and entered through the only window in the floor. He was met with the sight of an old man wearing the robes and kimono of a daimyo, who bade him to sit across from him. He was offered some tea and some sweets. Mikio decided not to insult the daimyo, so he sat down and accepted the offered refreshments. "I heard of your great deeds, young lord," the daimyo said. "My deeds?" Mikio asked, confused. "Yes, how you have taken in 9 strays, and accepted them into your family." 9 strays. Your brother in name and in blood, and you have done, and those 8 loyal retainers of yours. Yes, they are my family here, he confirmed. I also am aware of your plight, one of 2 I believe. One your memory, the other your friends. Yes, but, Mikio asked, how did you know of those things? I have many eyes and ears everywhere. But most of all you have helped one of my children find his will to live, his own will of fire. You know of Hai no Kuni? Of the elemental continent? Mikio desperately asked. Yes, I have been there before. One of my crows lost his ability to fly. You have taught him how to spread his wings again. I thank you for this. You are welcome, sir. Now, the mystery of the flashing lights is what brought you here, yes? It is. Then I shall tell you what those soldiers on the road had seen that night. The daimyo said, it was the arrival of a vortex of fire, it came to take you back, but I made it leave. You still had much to do. That request is a month late. I made sure of it. What? Why? If you knew my plight, why did not let it stay and wait for me? Why? Mikio said as he grabbed the daimyo by his robes. Calm down and I shall tell you, he calmly said. So Mikio put him down, and waited as patiently as he could. The daimyo was taking his time sipping some tea and eating some sweets before explaining his actions to the shinobi. You were not ready to leave. Had you left you would have regretted leaving your family. So I let you spend some more time with them, create more happy memories with them. Tell me, were you that eager to leave them then? No, was the quitter answer that was given. Now, you are ready to leave, but do not fret, you will see them again. In a month's time after you have left, the lands will shift and these lands as you know them will merge with elemental. 10 years shall pass for the Rosuto 10th family before you see each other once again. Why so long? Because that is the way it was meant to be. Recall the most recent continent-wide earthquake that you have felt. Quote. Have you recalled it? Yes. No one SD during that time. Why, what is so special aside from that fact? Mikio asked. It was when Yomi no Kuni and her brothers merged with elemental. I see, he decided to just believe. The window that is behind you is now a gateway to the vortex. Exit this castle through it and continue your quest. We shall see each other again, as I will grant your family a gift. My daughter shall bind your family to mine for all time, and you and yours forevermore shall have my favor. I have enjoyed my time with you. I bid you farewell, my new friend, the daimyo said before he, like the soldieress, vanished, this time before Mikio's very eyes. The door to the room he was in exploded inwards. Mikio was startled and almost drew his naginator, but stopped at the sight of his brother. He went to hug his brother and the other 8, then walked back to the window. My brother, I will miss you, you and the 8. But this is not goodbye, I shall see you all again in 10 years' time. I still have my memory to find, my past to discover, and my will of fire to rekindle, he said, then he opened the window and jumped out before Karasu could say anything. In a blazing burst of spiraling flames Mikio was gone, and what once was 10 now were 9. 3 days after Mikio had left them, the daimyo went to the Rosuto 10th's hideout. Being a daimyo with an escort of samurai with him, Karasu graciously and honorable let them enter his humble home. His retainers were in running distance should he need their aid. I know that you are wondering who I am. Yes, I am, Karasu confirmed. I am also wondering why you have come here and how you have found this place. I am the master of the castle you invaded. I am the one who sent you the mission to investigate the mysterious lights. I am also the one who last spoke to Rosuto Mikio. What? But you weren't in the room when we got there. You aren't the only one with powers, he stated. I have come here to fulfill a promise to your brother that I made to him before his departure. He then took out a scroll and handed it over to Karasu. What is this? Karasu said while looking at the unopened scroll. It is the written contract of my promise to your brother. A better life for you and your retainers is written within. Read it after I have left. It is as much a promise as it is a challenge, the daimyo said before he stood up and walked out and vanished. In the scroll were written instructions. Simply put, they told Karasu that in order for him to see his brother again he had to kill the daimyo's youngest living daughter and marry her in secret. After doing this he had to show the daimyo proof of the deed by entering the castle with his then wife, both of them unseen. If he does not do as the scroll instructed, then the armies of the night would rampage throughout the land unchecked and uncontrolled, giving the Shinigami more souls to collect, send to heaven or hell, or to devour. The name of the daimyo was written at the bottom of the scroll, along with a short message saying that Karasu had until the end of the month to present proof of doing the deed. The daimyo's name was Shikyokuji, the 9th daimyo of Yomi, the 9th daimyo of Jigoku, and the 9th holder of the title Tsukiyomi. His daughter's name was Shikyo Kagura. Akira, Daichi, Fumio, Hajime, Juniki, Tadao, Hisao, Hisashi. Get in here, now. At the roar of their master, the 4 Okugi rushed to the main living space of the Rosuto hideout. They kneel before their master and await his commands. Akira, Dashi, the 2 of you are to secure a priest, a Taoist if at all possible. Hi. Akira and Daichi answer before blurring out of existence. Fumio, Hajime, gather some kitchen supplies, you are to prepare a wedding feast. Hi. Both men blur out of existence to do as the heir told. Juniki, Tadao, get me the best bridal kimono you can. Hi. They too vanish to do as they're told. Hisao, you clean up the hideout. Hisashi, you coordinate with everyone. Hi. Hisao said before he too vanished. Karasu-sama, if I may ask. Ask away Hisashi. What is going on? I am to kill a princess and marry her in secret. Why would you do that, Karasu-sama? To see Mikio Aniki again, and to build up our clan. Hi, I shall take my leave now. Then Hisashi bows to his master and calmly walks out of the hideout. No time to waste, I'll do it tonight, Karasu said to himself. Once again Karasu was in front of the gate, but this time there were guards. The castle town was in Yomi, a part that the Shinigami gave to Tsukiyomi, who passed it on to his descendants. Instead of passing through the gate, Karasu just repeated what he did the last he went into the castle. But this time, since his aim wasn't at the top, he actually had to search the whole keep for the daughter of its lord. Well, these things don't always look the same on the inside, Karasu mused in the shadows, might as well start from the bottom and work my way up. So he moved some chakra onto his hands and feet and walked into the keep while the guards were looking away, then he stuck himself to the ceiling. It is a known fact that not that many people bother to look up. That is how he did his search. He crawled on the ceiling starting from the bottommost floor, which was the dungeon. So far he hadn't encountered anyone, not a soul was in sight. Not even a rat or a mouse. Nothing. It was like that night. Karasu feared that should he move up to the floor above he'd be greeted by lots of soldiers who he'd have to get rid of, life, boss, everything. While he was making his way to the stairs he noticed a door that he hadn't noticed before. His dark musings must have triggered some kind of mechanism that revealed such things. As he thought of having to kill more people, his mind filled itself with all the many ways he knew to kill people. His bloodlust grew, but it was uncontrolled. His curiosity got the better of him, so he crept silently and cautiously to the door. Pressing his ear to the door, his dark thoughts vanished as he heard someone inside. The breathing was slow, so it was possibly someone sleeping. He had to be thorough in his search, so he put up a barrier around him to silence any noise that his movements or the doors would make and opened the door. Inside was a girl with long red hair. She opened her eyes for a second, then closed them again. She had light brown eyes. She had a cute round face, full pink lips, and based on how her blankets hugged her figure. My oh my, what a figure. Gah, what kinds of thoughts are these? I've been spending way too much time around Akira and Daichi. He dropped down to the floor beside the bed, and looked the sleeping beauty over. He even pulled off the blanket. What he was met with was the sight of her body. It wasn't cold, so she wouldn't feel anything. There was no hidden breeze either. She rolled over and faced the wall, her back to him. Let's see, the scroll said that she had a skull birthmark on the back of her N. So he parted her hair and saw the mark. Found you. So he placed the forced sleep jutsu on the girl, then wrapped her up in the blanket. With one arm around her, he formed a single half-seal, channeled some chakra, and in his place was a Chishio Bushin that quickly transformed himself into the girl. The transformation was based solely on the memory of his creator, which was passed to him via the chakra link. Karasu, with the girl in his arms, ran like a bat out of hell in the direction of the Rosuto hideout. Once he got there, he laid the girl down on a futon in the main room of the hideout. His retainers lived in small tree houses in the trees that surrounded his back garden. As he sat down beside the sleeping beauty, his retainers gathered in front of him. Hisashi reported that all the preparations had been completed. The ceremony would take place in the garden, the traps and whatnot had already been moved. The wedding feast would occur there as well. Use jutsu if you must, but get her ready for the ceremony. Hi, they answered. A few minutes later, using some chakra strings, Akira and Daichi were controlling the now dolled up Kagura, and made her stand before the officiator of the wedding ceremony. At the last part, as the two were about to be joined as one, she woke up from her jutsu-induced slumber. Her body would not respond to her commands, her body refused to move for her. She looked around, she saw the priest, the retainers, and beside her, he saw a young handsome man dressed in ceremonial kimono. Then she noticed that she too was in a similar garb. But before she could do anything or say anything, the priest pronounced then to be joined for all eternity as husband and wife. Kagura was in shock, total and utter shock. She was married and she didn't know how it had happened. She was supposed to marry some great and powerful lord. Her father made her stay in the room in the dungeon so that no other man may look upon her. Only her husband was supposed to see her, and now she was married to some unknown man, with a handful of men. He didn't look like a lord, he didn't look powerful, he just looked so ordinary, except maybe for the fact that he was quite handsome. After the ceremony and the wedding reception was over, Kagura was carried bridal style by Karasu to the main room, which served as the bedroom of the hideout. He lay her down on the futon. But before he did anything to her, he heard some sounds from out in the garden. Stay here, he told her, then he walked out the back door. The garden had been transformed back to what it originally was, a death trap for any would-be trespassers. The retainers were in position, all of them holding bows with arrows already nocked. Karasu stood on a platform that was a good 3 feet higher than his men. He too had a bow in his hand and an arrow already nocked. The sounds of the footsteps of the trespassers were getting closer by the second. Suddenly out of the tree line were barbarians, 10 of them at a time. The defenders let their arrows fly, 9 out of the 10 were killed. Then another wave, and another 9 were killed, followed by another and another, until the defenders had to drop their bows and arrows and bring out the blades. There were now too many of them to take down with a few arrows. So the 9 men rushed the intruders and killed each and every one of them with 1 strike each. The door that led to the garden had been opened from the inside. In front of it stood Kagura. She watched the bloodless boss littered the garden, yet no blood was spilt. Then above her a shadow blocked out the sun. As she glanced up she saw that the shadow was a body, the body of the barbarian chieftain. The body was still, as if it stopped in the middle of movement. Then instead of attacking her, as she was thinking, it fell backwards and into one of the pits that littered the garden. Behind the pit that it fell into was her husband, Karasu. I thought I told you stay inside. He asked her. Why you did? I was just curious, she managed to stutter out. She had never seen so much death in her life. The only fights that she had ever seen were those between the soldiers and retainers of her father. This was the first time that she had seen an actual battle. His movements were too fast for her untrained eyes to track. A few seconds after she replied she was back in the house, on the futon lying down, with him leaning over her form. Next time I tell you to do something, you do it. Got it? Hi, she whispered. Good. Now, I admit, I've never done this. Done what? Consummated a marriage. Quote. Who am I kidding? I've never been married before, but the act can't be so different from those other times. Quote. Kagura couldn't think of anything to say, she just blushed. Everything afterwards happened in a blur. When she awoke the next day she was wrapped in a blanket alone in the room. The memories of her wedding night were very fuzzy. The back door opened to allow Karasu back into the room. In one hand was a tray of food, while the other was occupied with closing the door. Ah, good, you're awake, he said as he saw her sitting form. He then placed the tray before her. Eat up, he said. I am sorry that I had to pay you to marry you, but it was a necessary step in finding my brother. So, I am a tool, a means to find your brother. Yeah, nothing romantic at all. But even I must admit, you are beautiful. She decided not to say anything else, no words of forgiveness or anything of that sort. It wasn't likely that she would ever see her father again. By the way, in case you haven't figured it out, my name is Karasu, and you are now Rosuto Kagura, a member of the Rosuto 10th family. This information caught her attention, then she was now a part of a family, a clan that was even more talked about than most samurai and ninja clans. She realized that those tall tales that some of her father's soldiers spoke of were real. But if I am married to one Rosuto brother, then what happened to the other one? She wondered to herself. Karasu-sama, may I ask a question? You already have. Feel free to ask another. What happened to your brother? Oh, he went home, to his home. You know, I actually thought that you were some caged bird. But by asking that question, I realized that you are not. Huh, what do you mean by caged bird? Oh, it's just that you were in a room in the dungeons when I found you. Oh, Otu-sama made me stay there 2 months ago. He said that he didn't want any other man to see me anymore, since he had promised me to some powerful lord, she said, but since I'm married to you, that doesn't matter anymore. Akira, one of my retainers brought you some kimonos last night, pick one and ready yourself, he told her, then he stood up and walked to the back door. Why? She asked. Tonight, we will see your father, he told her as he walked out. Karasu didn't shut the door, Akira did after entering. I am Okugi Akira, he introduced himself, I'll just leave the supplies that you will need in order to look your best. Look my best. For what? For when Karasu-sama presents you as his wife to Kyudaime Tsukiyomi-sama. Who? It doesn't matter right now, but he is the current literal god of the moon. What? She shouted panicked, the only way she knew of meeting a god was to S or something like that. Don't worry about it. Mikio-sama, Karasu-sama's brother, explained it to us before he left, he informed her, the gods and goddesses are immortal, but they too may grow tired of their responsibilities, so they appoint mortals to act as them, or govern in their stead. Tsukiyomi-sama still exists, but he has chosen his descendants to govern the moon for him. That sounds like something Otu-sama once told me. Good, now get dressed, you have until sunset. Come nightfall, Karasu found himself once again outside the gate to the castle town ruled by Shikyokuji. He needed to get in as stealthily as he did the last time. He would not get caught. He tossed up his grappling hook, then he climbed up the wall. He would not use his chakra if he could help it. Somehow he knew that Kuji had a way of detecting the usage of it this time around. After reaching the second level, he made his way to the wall that would lead him up to the third level, then he used his grappling hook to climb up. Just like the first time he had seen the keep place, there were flashing lights coming from the top floor. Looks like that's where I gotta go. Wonder if the door was fixed, he wondered to himself. So he once again used his grappling hook, this time to pull himself up or help him climb up the outside of the keep. In record time he was by the only window on the top floor of the keep. I have a feeling that my blood clone hasn't been found out yet, he wondered, then he peeked in to confirm that indeed his clone was still in existence. There was no better time than the present, he said his way into the room, he actually succeeded in surprising Kuji. Before anyone else in the room could act, he pulled out his Naginator and shoved it into the gut of his Chiseo Bushin. Instead of the illusion of someone else, the clone was surrounded by smoke as soon as Karasu pulled out the blade. When the smoke cleared, Kagura and the 8 Okugi appeared in the room. How's that, Yurei-sama? Karasu asked Kuji. Impressive. Yes, well, at the end of the month I shall fulfill my end of the deal. After your coronation ceremony the ground shall shake and from the heavens a light shall bring these lands together with elemental. He stood and walked closer to the newlyweds. What will you name your future land? Yami no Kuni, the land of darkness, was Karasu's immediate reply, as if he were possessed. A land of perpetual darkness, nice, I like it. A place where only the moon's light brightens the sky, with the absence of the light of stars, and the clouds adding a little beauty to the skies. I like it. If I may, Daichi said, it fits our natures, but what of the other lands? We shall let a higher power deal with that. Elemental is said to be a continent so vast that not all of it had been explored, and we shall be a part of the region that has yet to be explored. Otusama, are you saying that I am married to the man you promised me to? Kagura asked her father. Yes, although the promise had yet to be made at the time, he said as he smiled at her. He was rewarded for his efforts by having a fist making contact with his head, which sent him crashing down to the ground. What was that for? Kuji shouted as he got back on his feet. I don't like being used for someone else's enjoyment, Kasaru stated. HMPH, blame my actions on your brother, he brought about this karma on you, Kuji said as he dusted himself off. The karma has passed, deal with it, at least I didn't send a flock of crows to attack you. After having said that, Kuji left the room, to speak with his retainers and such about the preparations that had to be made, as well as Beret his soldiers and hired help for letting Karasu in so easily. After waking up from his vortex of winds-induced sleep, Jiraiya found himself on an island in the middle of a massive lake. His island was right smack dab in the middle of the lake. The lake was so wide and so long that Jiraiya could not see the shoreline. How did he know that it was a lake? Well, right beside where he woke up was a sign that read, "Welcome to the middle of the lake." Being in the middle of a lake meant that no matter which direction he went, he would get to shore all the same. The time it would take to travel would be the same no matter what direction he moved. Having nothing else on the island aside from the sign, since he couldn't find anything else, he decided to run on the surface of the lake. What the Ero Sennin did not know was that if he had pumped some chakra into the sign it would turn into a speed boat. But alas, it was his loss, that his imagination was not creative enough. As he ran on the water's surface he failed to realize that there were things in the water following his movements. These things had encountered a similar sapien in the past that had disturbed the tranquility of the lake. These things wanted a piece out of the person who had disturbed them before, but since they couldn't get to that person, this unsuspecting one would be their object for them to exact their revenge upon. The creatures at the forefront of the underwater charge were great beasts with 4 flippers for limbs. Its skull resembled that of a crocodile's, it had an elongated and cylindrical snout, its tail resembled a sea snake's tail, and it was roughly more than 49 feet in length. These big-ass hell monsters of muscle mass were heading Ero Sennin's way. Jiraiya thought that since he was stuck in the middle of nowhere, he would have some fun. Running for as long he had been running was great for blood circulation and all that, but it got boring. He hadn't even encountered one monster yet. So he decided to act like a toad and hop along the surface of the water. His first jump allowed him to avoid the massive maw of the Tylosaurus that tried to take a big life-threatening bite out of him. After landing he took a quick glance behind him and the creature. To think is to create. Why did I have to think monster in a place like this? He immediately went into battle mode. He couldn't afford to stay still in the water, so he hopped away farther and farther from the middle of the lake, and closer to the shore. It took him 3 precious seconds to land and hop away. In the span of that time another Tylosaurus would snap its jaws in the space that the Super L had just vacated. It had gotten to the point where there were other monstrous creatures whose heads, and sometimes boss, started to break the water's surface in an attempt to eat the Super L. After a few hours of constant hopping and dodging certain doom, Jiraiya spotted the shore. He also spotted a towering vortex of spiraling flames. If a vortex of wind brought me here, then that solitary tower of flame is bound to take me somewhere else, he thought to himself. As he hit the water from his latest stop he floored it. He ran for the shore with all the speed that he could get his feet on. As he blasted towards the tower of power there were several sonic booms that could be heard, which the creatures underneath the surface felt through the shockwaves that were sent beneath the waves. They hesitated in their chase, which was perfect for Ero Sennin, since it allowed him to jump into the vortex unhindered. Having lost the chance to get a life-sized bite out of their prey, they turned on each other. Hiding up in the trees that litter the shorelines are a couple hundred blonde-haired teens. They watched the beasts tear into one another, as if they were studying their movements, their attacks, and how they tried to take out that blasted Ero Sennin. The 4 men were spat out of the whirling tornado of scalding flames in front of the main gate of Kiba no Kuni's daimyo's residence. The moon had taken his place in the sky. The 4 men found Kiyomi, once again by a campfire, with all their tents and whatnot encircling the campfire. They didn't bother asking how she managed to convince the daimyo to let her set up camp there. all that mattered was that she was there. After finishing the dinner they each went to a separate tent, and fell asleep. Jiraiya still slept in a separate tent from Kiyomi. In the span of the first month after Ikaku joined the group, the men had experienced 3 brand new large-scale adventures. First was the fiasco with Ryo Wo, the second was the chase ending with the forgiveness of Inari, and the third was the being sucked up in a tornado and split up. Haru ended up somewhere in the Philippines, Ikaku landed on the moon, Mikio landed in Japan, and Jiraiya landed in a massive lake with lots of things that wanted to eat him. The 2 months after that the 4 men kept finding themselves in various caves being chased by a number of different creatures, ranging from ghosts, molten monsters, kappas, kitsunes, dragons, the occasional goblin, ushi oni, an assortment of oni, a couple of insulted gods, token, and the like. 3 months and 3 weeks into their journey as a group of 5, the men actually got lost in a supermarket in Na no Kuni. Kiyomi had opted to stay at the hotel and wait for them there. It wasn't like the men would get lost in a supermarket. But lo and behold, the men did get lost in a supermarket. They found themselves a few hours into their shopping in a forest inside the grocery. How it got in there, they didn't want to know. How to get to the cashier is what they wanted to know. There were directions everywhere, but none that pointed them to the exit. They walked for hours and hours more, searching for any more signs of life until they came across a skeleton of a man one-hand G-sping a shopping cart handle. It wasn't some elaborate genjutsu to make customers go bonkers, it wasn't some prank to get customers to lower the guards so that some dude could steal their money or something, it was far worse, it was real. Apparently the 4 men were still in the vegetable and fruits section of the grocery-turned-forest. How did they know this? Well, Haru had kicked a pumpkin that grew legs and started to chase them. Th's pumpkin was followed by some radishes, a couple dozen apples, 3 carrots, a pineapple, a pear, a half dozen peaches, 15 lemons, a crate load of bananas, and a bunch of giant fruits and vegetables. These green produce were calling for the 4 men's blood. They were somehow shouting things about revenge against plant eaters, vengeance for the other plants that met their fate on the plates of salad eaters, and other such plant-related nonsense, usually shouted by extreme environmentalists, but these weren't environmentalists, these were honest-to-godness walking, talking, produce. The 4 men managed to shake the things after a few more hours of running here, there, into a wall, and everywhere. But just as they were about to relax and let down the guard, they were assaulted by the meat section of the grocery jungle. Yes, no longer a forest but a jungle, the meat and everything that came from animals converged on one another and formed a giant meat monster, in the shape of a giant bull, well, several giant bulls made out of meat and other animal-related food. So the 4 men once again ran here, there, through the wall again, and everywhere, which landed them in front of the produce. So they did as before and ended up face to face with the giant meat bulls. Then they repeated the process over and over again until they could run no longer, not because they didn't have the energy to do so, but because they were right smack dab in the middle of the mutant produce and the giant meat bull. These are the moments or times that they wished they were Akamikis or something like those big-boned Konoha nins. The sides charged at the 4 men, the only thing they could do was duck once the 2 sides actually pounced. Meat met plant, it was a clash of the tans of the food world. Beef, pork, chicken, and fish ganged up on the carrots, lemons, watermelons, and cabbages. The other veggies and fruits teamed up against the other meat and fish-related foods. Blood, guts, and produce were flying everywhere. It turned into a battle royale of flavor once the herbs and spices joined in the fray. It was as wacko as Jacko in that place, heads were rolling as eggs went cracking. It was quite a mess, the 4 men just sat there on the floor, mesmerized by the food. The only thing that was missing was all the junk food. It was after that thought that giant chocolate monsters and other monsters made of sugary goodness jumped into the mess. Their sweet and delicious goodness were overwhelming the compassion. Their combined unhealthy filth was too much for either side. So the meat and plant sides joined forces to battle this healthless foe. It was a battle of breakfast, lunch, and dinner rolled into one. Appetizers, the main course, soup, and dessert were battling for dominance. But the one to rule them all, a soggy fist, was the final entrant into the fray. The instant ramen had arrived. The prepackaged near godliness of the foods had arrived. With it came the bowls of boiling water, ready to boil out the nutrients of those healthy foods in not time. The champion of healthless cuisine had arrived. In the end, the junk food came out on top. The giant instant ramen bowl threatened to come for them if they ate any more health foods for the rest of their stay in Na no Kuni. After that proclamation, the four men ran through the maze of winding aisles until they finally found themselves in front of the cashiers. Behind them were 40 shopping carts loaded with junk food. For the sake of the continued existence in Na no Kuni, they offered up what money they had, and a few signed copies of their books, to buy the junk food and appease the champion of the junk food. Little did they know that the supermarket or grocery that they had been shopping in was owned by Rosuto Yunan, the company. After the four men left, all the mutated food vanished to reveal several blondes, all with kitsune-like grins plastered on their faces. Punishment for leaving me, hey, thanks zombie sensei, thought a 1,000-plus-year-old Konoha genin. Officially he was a genin, although he hadn't seen or even been in Konohagakure no Sato for centuries. Once all the junk food had been sealed up in storage scrolls, the four men made their way as fast as their little legs could carry them back to the hotel to check out of it and drag Kiyomi out of Na no Kuni as FST as they could, and since she was usually slower than them, Jiraiya grabbed her BS and... Well, let's stick to the chest area, shall we, which caused weeks of dedication and hard work to vanish, but it also had the effect on Kiyomi that all four men were wanting to happen. She ran after them like she was possessed by a demon bat that had just escaped the clutches of hell or something like that, or even something that was faster than that. Of course, once she caught up with the men, Jiraiya had to plaster a big chunk of ice to his privates to get him to heal. The other men just looked like mummies for the remainder of the week. It had been 4 months since Ikaku had joined the party. It had been 12 months since Jiraiya last saw Naruto, his apprentice. It had also been 12 months since the two, master and apprentice, had left the gates of the beloved Konohagakure no Sato. It was exactly 1 year. How did Jiraiya know this? Well, Ero Senin, the voice says, dig a hole in the ground with your bare hands till your fingernails start to bleed and eventually fall off one by one. Once you have run out of fingernails, you should find a wooden chest. The voice says to get that chest of the ground using your teeth. Once the chest is out of the ground, you are to jump up and down 3 times and shout to the world that you are gay and... Mikio paused in his giving Jiraiya instructions. Scratch out that shout to the world bit. Skipping that minor little detail, you should then open the chest by kicking it open, and making sure that the lid hits Haru's head before he does something that will get Tsukiyomi mad at us. Hi. Jiraiya decided to just get it over with. The last time he refused to do something like this due to Mikio telling him to, Haru got a dozen bears to chase the 3 men round and round the campsite until Kiyomi kicked one in the balls for disturbing her sleep. After temporarily sending Haru into a coma, Jiraiya peered into the chest to find some baby pictures of Kiyomi, and a scroll addressed to him. It read, a year ago to the day, you left your village with 1 student, 3 months into your journey you left your companion. 3 months back you almost found him again. 12 months to this day you left and lost, and still haven't found. Don't worry, you still have 2 more years of separation. Good luck. It wasn't signed by anyone, but at the bottom of the main message was a smaller one, which read, Mikio, you tell that voice of yours he is so screwed. Ero Senin, you do anything to Kiyomi that has anything to do with your nickname and I shall personally have you face the Kyubi no Yoko. To Ikaku Senin, Ryo wo sends his regards. That was all the scroll said. After reading it several times, the scroll got annoyed at how it was being handled and decided to voice its thoughts. It flew out of the hands of whomever was holding it and self-origamied itself into a mouth. I've been manhandled by men far led than you 4, and I must say that they were far better at treating an enchanted piece of paper than you 4 will ever be. Then it exploded into 1,000 pieces just to show the men how displeased it was at how they treated it. Then the pieces of paper, ash, and ink, were carried away by the wind to the shadows within a nearby cave. 2 more years. Here's hoping I find Naruto before I wonder what's the color of Kiyomi-chan's UNSS today. His lecherous grin told Kiyomi, who was watching the Super L more or less the train of his thoughts. Normally she wouldn't really mind, but it was that time of the month. Jiraiya, and the other 3 by relation, found themselves flying through the air at breaking speeds. Haru's head landed in a hornet's nest while his other head went through a beehive. Mikio landed face first in some bare dung, his hands in muddy water. Ikaku found himself lying on his back in a pit filled with monitor lizards. Jiraiya, well, somehow landed face first in the middle of Tsunde's forehead, the one of the Hokage monument. They all managed to get back to camp in record time. It was their turn to hunt and gather. The consequences of not completing that mission were dire. It was either not get there in record-breaking time, or eat the 20 cart loads of junk food that still remained. There was just something about junk food that gave them the creeps. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.